All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in. I am Taylor Brooks, host for today. Is there a bit of an film or okay? I'm not sure how to figure that out. Give me 1 second. That wasn't the pregame. Let me try. See if that's slightly better. Tom, it might be the intro.
Yeah.
Go. Don't mind introducing speakers real quick through it, and let me try to.
No, I'll take it from here. Hi, everybody. This is Tom Friend, a senior NBA writer for Sports Business Journal. We're here for our SBJ Live. We have Dwayne Hankins from the Portland Trailblazers. I'll let him announce everything, his title, and Andrew Saltzman from the Atlanta Hawks, and Lee Burke from Lee Burke Media here, president there. We're here to talk about the RSN situation in the NBA, the landscape, and how it's changing and evolving. I guess I want to start here with we'll start with Andrew. Andrew, as you head into the season, obviously there's things hanging over every executive's head, and one of the things is television. The season is 6 days away, and you had to figure out whether Diamond Sports Group is going to be there for you. You are a Diamond team, Bally Sports South. Can you talk about what it was like heading into the season as you prepared for it from a TV standpoint?
Yeah, it was challenging. I mean, it was challenging for them. They've been our partners for a long time. It was challenging for us. It was challenging for the league. We didn't know exactly what we didn't know as we continued through the process. But I think we were always rooted in the value of the content. And, we've seen great disruption and change over the past few years. No question about that. I think we all on this panel and others in the league can certainly echo those sentiments. But we know, again, the content has tremendous value. So we were always rooted that we'd come up with a viable solution.
I think what was sort of the contingency plan? What did you have to deal with as far as, just to educate everybody on this, Diamond Sports Group, they are in bankruptcy court. Their future is in limbo. And if they do not emerge, there's 12 NBA teams that would be left in the lurch. They would have to go and get over-the-air deals or whatever happens. The Hawks are one of those teams. So, Andrew, with that lurking overview, what did you have to deal with? I mean, what did you have to kind of get in hand?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's 13 teams.
13 teams.
And I think we had to, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst and look at other options. And we had the test last year of having 10 games over the air with great television here. And so we knew that there were options for us and we'll continue to have them. But we were also, had to understand we're still under contract and we had to let the courts handle this and the league handle this. I think everybody did a pretty amazing job keeping everything together through the process. But it was, I don't want to lie, very challenging, but challenging for everybody involved. And we're not alone in this. You think about those people who work at Diamond and under the Bally's umbrella, what they've gone through throughout this, last 18 months, 2-year process. It's been pretty brutal.
Shifting to Dwayne, up in Portland, they had a different situation. They're not a Diamond Sports team. They were with Root Sports. And what were the challenges there for you, Dwayne? I mean, again, and then the backdrop of this is the RSN business, as Lee will point out, is the cable industry. It's dropping. Subscriptions are dropping year by year. Mm-hmm. So here's Root. What kind of reach did you have under Root? What was it going on there with you?
Yeah, I mean, we started last season with already challenged distribution, and then the eve before the season started on October 1st, actually, Root and Comcast had a distribution conversation that led to Root being only distributed on premium tier of cable for Comcast. And so that really dropped our penetration to under 25%. So 1 out of every 4 households in Oregon and Washington had access to the games. So that was incredibly challenging for us last year. On the court, obviously, we had our challenges, and then off the court, our games were hard to watch. So we saw the largest ratings decline in the NBA because of that. And I think this offseason, we just knew we couldn't be in that same situation. Root had been a great partner of ours for a long time, but it was really important for us to get our games in front of fans again and really find our way forward.
So what was the process? What did you have to kind of figure out there to get this done?
Yeah, I mean, it started with conversations with Root, and they were a great partner again to deal with in terms of getting out of that agreement. The Kraken obviously had done the same, and we're on the same regional sports network that we were on, so they kind of paved the way for us a little bit. And then from there, we were able to open up and have conversations. And as Andrew said, our rights are really valuable when you get them in front of the right folks. And we had a bunch of partners that were incredibly interested in doing a deal with us. Where we landed was with Sinclair. We were excited about Sinclair. They're an incredible partner. They've done this before in the Utah market and a really great job. Their local news presence is really strong here in Portland. And then I think maybe most importantly was they have a network of stations, which we're calling the Rip City TV network, in and around Oregon and Washington, which allows our games to be viewed in 4 times the homes they were viewed last year. So that really was the part that was exciting for us.
I want to get back to that Rip City Television Network. I want to get to Lee. Lee, can you give an overview of what the RSN business is right now, especially the NBA, and what teams are dealing with? Can you give a big picture view of that?
Yeah, sure. Glad to. And look, I like the title of RSN. I mean, this is a model that had been thriving for decades. Goes all the way back to 1969 with MSG Network being the first one. It's all based upon the growth of pay television, cable television, satellite television. 2010s, it was about 100 million subscribers. And then the pandemic hit, and I was seated on my couch about 4 years ago, and I said, oh my God, this model is not going to work anymore. And this is not just a Diamond problem. Diamond's the flashpoint because of all the debt they incurred. But it's a Root problem. It's a AT&T Sportsnet problem, and those have all shut down. And so it impacts every North American hockey, basketball, baseball team, all because people are changing their viewing habits. They're not coming out of college, entering the workforce and saying, I'm going to buy a cable bundle. They're buying streaming. They're watching games on TikTok. In most TV markets, 30 to 40% of all TV households are called BBOs, broadband only households, that only get their video via the internet. So when you've got the RSNs that are based upon cable exclusivity, pay TV exclusivity, and they were thriving when that penetration was increasing, they've been hampered. And as Dwayne said, you're down to 20, 30% subscribers that actually can see, or TV households that can see your games. That's crippling, and not only in terms of revenues, but ultimately in terms of creating new fans and creating the next generation of fans. So it's been a scramble by everybody involved to come up with ways to distribute your games to where your fans are and on the screens they're watching, which is why something like Rip City that's seen on broadcast and also seen on streaming, and teams I've been involved with like the Mavericks and the Suns and the Jazz, the opportunities to offer up broadcast and streaming components along with pay TV allow you to break out of that. But as everybody notes, as Andrew notes, you're under contracts. It takes a long time sometimes for the business to catch up with the changes in technology. And the RSNs have really gotten the brunt of that over the last several years, which is why we're facing the changes and in the situation that we are today.
And what you just said, it's not what happens to you, it's how you react. So, right, the NBA teams need to react. Rip City Television Network, you have Blazer Vision as your streaming app. Dwayne, this is a great alternative. Andrew, I know you guys have Peachtree TV. Can you talk to me about how that factors into your vision in the future, or what it means for you guys in Atlanta?
Sure. Again, just so we're clear, that was last season.
Right.
And right now, nothing has been landed on for this season. So this was last year, and certainly Lee is very tied into this dynamic in the work that he's done and his firm has done. It was really all about learnings. that's really how we approached last season. It was, what do we learn from it? Obviously we saw a pretty big spike in ratings, 2.5 times, which was really, really important for us as we think about, hey, what could the future be like? In addition to be available over the air on Hulu and YouTube, when we have one of the youngest audiences in the NBA, certainly in the Atlanta market. We're young, we're diverse. You have to have your product where it's accessible to your audience. So that was great learnings for us. We tried to be consistent. We came up with 9 of our 10 games were on Friday nights. This concept, and again, I work for an amazing marketer in Steve Koonin, former television executive. So, having him leading the charge for us is almost an unfair advantage, but we'll take it. And I think it's good for the whole league in the role he plays. But we really wanted to think through how do we develop some consistency and build it. And it was a very successful venture for us, getting our toe in the water of having some of our games over the air last year.
Last year, I will point out, every Diamond team was allowed to have 10 over-the-air games. This year, the way the deal is working, there's 5, the option to have 5. Several teams are doing that. Not everyone. It's not very lucrative. You're not going to get much of the right in the form of rights fees. But it's as Andrew said, it's a test case for Dwayne. I mean, with Rip City Television Network. I mean, you're not alone now. There's the Rock Entertainment in Cleveland that's hanging in there. They're there. If things fall through for the Cavaliers in the future, they've got that. You've got a situation in the Gulf Coast Television Network for the Pelicans. They just released their Pelican Plus today. Everybody's got it in the wings, waiting in the wings. How did you have to kind of generate this Rip City Television Network?
I mean, I think we're lucky in that we've always produced our own broadcasts. So the Blazers have a long, rich history of doing their own broadcasts. And that's something that even in the rights deals that we've done previously, we always wanted to keep production in-house. We always wanted to sell our own ads. And so when it came to this summer and our decision-making there, we were, as Lee's talked about, you get to these distribution challenges. Not only are people cutting cable, but you get into these challenges with, we're not on Comcast for maybe a period of time, or then we're not on DirecTV, or we're not on this. And we were just caught up in these issues. And what we wanted to do was, we create our own broadcast. We do all that in-house. So how do we get out of that battle a little bit too? And so when we went to the folks at Sinclair, knowing that we could be on over the air and just have that part done and then have Blazer Vision, it's almost like, we already do the broadcast, just tell us where to plug in the cords. It's not, that simple, of course, in the end, but we always have taken a ton of pride in doing that. And I think in the last couple of years, especially, have done a lot of things to try to have a national presence or feel of our broadcast. We've upped the production level. We've tried to monetize our broadcast differently, have won Emmys here in the Northwest. And so we really wanted people to be able to see that broadcast. And distribution was just sort of top of mind the entire time. Our fans' ability to watch games was top of mind the entire time. It's definitely less revenue than getting a traditional rights fee, but we think in the end, a few years from now, we'll be able to monetize the broadcast appropriately and start to see, a difference between what we were getting as an upfront rights fee between what we're able to monetize later on.
Yeah, I want to get back to that, Dwayne. It's really an important subject. Lee, what do you see the future here? I mean, listen, Andrew's kind of on hold. We don't know what's going to happen with Diamond. That's all on hold. The Diamond teams are pending. Teams like the Blazers have been proactive. What do you see what an NBA team has to do?
It's at this point, I was totaling things up over the last couple of days. At this point, I think 20 teams across NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball have dropped off of their respective RSNs. That's only going to continue in the sense these RSNs are tremendously stressed financially, obviously Diamond, and it's a question as to how many networks come out of the bankruptcy hearing. They're going to push a reorg plan. It's out there right now. It'll be ruled on in mid-November. And you have to assume that in markets where they're dropping out, the baseball team, and they've already talked about losing the baseball team. It's going to be difficult to sustain those RSNs on just NBA and NHL alone. So there may be additional networks and or teams that fall off the map in various markets. The AT&T RSNs have shut down. Individual teams have created their own RSNs. But as Andrew and Dwayne, as you mentioned, when you get tiered, and Comcast is doing this market after market, they're doing it in Pittsburgh for Sportsnet Pittsburgh. They're doing it for Masson. Tiering, being on a premium tier is tremendously challenging. It costs out the door about $120, $130 a month to subscribe and see your games as part of that premium tier subscription. And that reduces your fans. So what's going forward? What Dwayne mentioned, the kind of self-sufficiency that you have, Andrew has certainly the advantage with having Steve there, to have the ability to produce your own games, to sell your own games, to create your own signal and offer up that signal on the screens where fans are located. You want to be on broadcast, and a number of markets have been working with Tegna, been working with Gray to gain that distribution. You want to be streamed, been working with Kiswe and various streaming networks. There's others out there. The key is that's where your fans are. Their fans are on broadcast. Your fans are on streaming. There's certainly fans on pay TV, and broadcasters able to reach those pay TV subs. You've got to be prepared to be more self-sufficient, to get your signal onto the screens and distribute where you need to be, because that's where your future lies. You don't. The reality is you're not born a Blazers fan or a Hawks fan. You have to become one. You have to see the games. You have to watch the games. You have to hear the games. If they can't be watched or seen, then you're ultimately growing a smaller fan base going forward. To increase that, you've got to be able to come up with a media strategy going forward that allows you to be on all platforms, broadcast and pay TV and streaming.
Yeah, and I don't. This may be a question for Lee to answer, or a topic for Lee first. Take your crystal ball. We look at a situation where, you talk about the Rock Entertainment in Cleveland. You talk about Gulf Coast. You talk about Blazer, Rip City. Eventually, every team is going to be over the air. Am I guessing? What is the future here? Over the air and streaming. And then the NBA there's been talks about looking into down the road a national streaming RSN where it lands Amazon, Roku, YouTube, who knows? But that is another option that MLB is also exploring. So what is the future going to look like here? What does every team have to do to be out there?
Ultimately, teams are becoming not just NBA teams, but Major League Baseball, NHL, are trying to become year-round event and content distributors. There is no off-season. The NBA in particular is very well positioned with that, particularly nationally, and then market by market with the growth of the WNBA. Now you've got Major League top quality pro basketball events throughout the year. There's certainly a wide range of content that goes along with it, G League games and international games and interview shows and what have you. The key is to be able to offer up the range of screens to commercialize that content. And that's where Rock comes in. That's where Rip City comes in. That's where Peachtree last year came in. The opportunity to offer up a range of content, a range of screens, a range of platforms. Granted, not every game is going to deserve being on broadcast television. There's things that work on streaming. There's things that work on cable. The key is to have the flexibility to do that. And that's where coming up with these networks, having the production, having the master control, having the ad sales. So it allows you to satisfy your sponsors, your ad sales, your customers, your fans across all these platforms on a year-round basis.
For Dwayne and Andrew, can you talk about what you're hearing from your fans about this? Because this is probably confusing for fans. They want to know where the games are. I mean, local TV is so huge. You talk to anybody in the league. Yes, those national ratings are huge, but the core fans, they want to watch their team. They're going to be with their team. A lot of fans will be, lose or win. They're going to be there. What are you hearing from them? Andrew or Dwayne, what are their fans?
I mean, it's frustrating. The good news for all of us is we have such heightened, strong two-way communication with our fan bases. We all do. I mean, this is not, what these little devices, these computers that we hold in our hand can now do, and how we can communicate in such real time, so rapidly, gives us a huge, huge advantage. So it's just about being proactive. It's about listening and understanding. There are often times where you'll hear from someone, certainly on the younger set of our audience, and I'm sure Dwayne and all teams, where someone will say, "I watched the game last night." Well, what they watched was clips and snackable pieces. Like, what they think is watching the game may not be what an old fuddy-duddy like me thinks about when I grew up watching my sports games, in New York City on WPIX or WOR, or sitting in the stands and scoring a Mets game. I mean, it was a different mindset in how fans work. So we're always trying to, stealing a hockey analogy, go where the puck is going. Like, where is this going to be? And we think about, what does 5 years look like? What's the 10-year-old today who's going to be 15? How are you building generational fandom and a generational fan base as you think through? So those are just all the things that rest on our mind. But it's challenging, certainly.
One more thing from Andrew. What do fans say? I mean, do you guys get email? I mean, you get text, email. I mean, how are they responding? What is the sort of the reaction generally?
Yeah, I think there's a frustration. There's certainly a frustration. Hey, where can I find your games? And we always want to come up with a solution. Hey, if you're not a cable subscriber, or you don't have one of the services that has Bally's on it, here are some other ways you can do it. Obviously, the D2C, the Bally's Sports Plus, and looking that as an alternative, bundling that, and teams have done that, some successfully, some not so successfully, for their fan base. So it's listening. You want to listen, you want to hear it, and looking at, as solutions come down the pike, how you can make sure you're delivering that message.
Dwayne, for you, you're in a different situation because you've made this leap that you're able to make, whereas they aren't. What are your fans saying? I mean, what's been the reaction to this, and what was it like before you made the leap?
Yeah. I mean, before it was the biggest frustration that our fans had, and it wasn't even just last year. It had been that way for many previous years, but last year is when it really came to a head for our fan base. It was the number one thing. We were getting phone calls, texts, notes from season ticket holders, and that part was, again, I think why we needed to take quick action. I think since the announcement has happened, it's been probably the biggest, piece of business news that we could have made from a positive PR aspect. So our fans are incredibly excited about all the options, both with the streaming product and the over-the-air product. So it's been, it's been huge, and it's been beneficial. I think, again, I go back to the fact that, there's a cost to it, and we think that we took that hit on the revenue this year, and we expect to see it grow in future years. And then just to get back to Lee's point about looking into the future, I think teams, from the time we started to have websites and create social media accounts, we needed to start figuring out how to create compelling, interesting content. So even for the teams like us who have done broadcast, the teams that haven't, this is sort of the natural next step in progression. They're going to have to figure out how to do these games on their own. And I think it's going to benefit teams because it's going to manage. You're going to have your 2.5 hour game commercial, which is going to be exciting, but it's going to help expand the content that you're creating off the court, off the field. And we've become, not only are we primarily selling tickets and sponsorships here, that's a big part of our business. We're also in the content creation business, and in no bigger way than the teams now who have to take on production and make these games and get them out there. So I think it's exciting. Like, if you go back, like I said, to the days of a social media coordinator holding up their phone during shoot around, we've now come full circle to where we have to produce the entire game, which is actually exciting.
Yeah, I think the vision, and we will get into this, I think the future is every team's going to have their own network. I mean, basically, obviously there's MSG and there's Monumental and there's this already before. Their challenge in altitude, their challenge is going to be, and Altitude starting this is getting over the air. Altitude's doing 20 games over the air and having sort of a hybrid. But, Monumental and MSG, they're going to at some point going to have to go over the air. They have to figure that out. Every team is going to have to become their own network. Am I right on that? And what's your take on that? Start with you, Lee. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, look, the problem is, it's funny. Every media breakthrough becomes legacy media eventually. And, you talk through what took place with broadcast companies, and they invested a lot, and then cable came in, and they invested a lot in infrastructure and billions for infrastructure for MVPDs. And now streaming comes along, and that infrastructure isn't worth as much because now you can offer up on streaming. And the idea is ultimately it goes back to the old phrase, content is king. You need to be able to offer up, to produce the content, and then you're agnostic as to how it's delivered. We kind of were lulled into a false sense of security, like pay TV was it. That people were going to get their bundles, and that was the end of at least regional sports media, national sports media. I mean, ESPN's gone through the same issues here, and that's why the flagship is going to be offered up on direct to consumer next August, and the same is happening here. So ultimately, what you need to do is be agnostic as to what platform you're going to be on, and create the signal, sell the advertising, offer up robust approaches for streaming, because the bulk of your audience increasingly will be watching this content online and on their phones and on their laptops and iPads, and be able to engage them across every screen that they're watching. If you're not, you lose out. It was easier back in the cable days if you were in 90% of all TV households and you went on cable. That was straightforward. It's much more complex now, but then again, you don't necessarily have to make the upfront investment in equipment. You need to make the upfront investment in terms of production and be able to have the flexibility so that your business can move quickly as the audience trends move and the technology moves. That's a tough thing to do with media, but we're all going through that right now, and that gives us the flexibility to move forward and anticipate as compared to react.
I want to talk about finances. I think this is obviously the bottom line business here, guys. And Dwayne, you're being very frank about this. I mean, obviously, in Andrew's case, the Hawks case, they still getting their rights fees from Diamond. Their haircuts, they're 30 to 40% less than what they made, but they're still substantial money. They're able to, in the MLB, these teams, leverage their salaries, the players off this money they get from these media rights fees. So for your case, I'm told that in Utah last year, they only reached 60% of projections, roughly. There is a risk involved here. I want to get more specific into how you guys can make it up. I mean, you talk about the attendant merchandise you might get, expanded viewership, how that will help sales, ticket sales. Tell me how you can maybe potentially make this up that you're losing in rights fees by going over the air.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the long term is definitely lifelong fans that we think will create that generational fan that you guys all talked about. So I think that part we're kind of comfortable with. The second piece of that is I don't think I just don't know if that money is going to be there 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now. And our risk was, let's just go in now. We already do the broadcast ourselves. Let's start a year early and start trying to create a business model out of this. I think our projections, I think for us, it's been really all about the fans and just winning back, the Blazer fan who probably has slipped away from us for the last couple of years. And once we do that, we think it's going to be in ad sales. We think it's going to be in the content that we integrate throughout the games. We think it's going to be in, ticket sales. We have plenty of upside there and potential to go move forward. And things like retail. I don't know that we'll ever get back to the big numbers that we had before, but I think as a small market, especially, you already have a smaller fan base as it is, and then you make that 20% of what that fan base is, and then suddenly you're looking at a very small group of people who are actually able to watch the games. And for us, just being the market that we were, and getting the rights fee that we were, there was sort of a graph where the two lines got crossed, and we said, this is it. We need to kind of move on from this. I think it's a different calculation for markets that are maybe bigger than Portland.
Yeah, I think that brings me to the next subject here, and you somehow that money needs to be made up. The national rights deal is $77 billion over 11 years, and that's including the WNBA. That's a lot of money that's about to come to these teams starting in 26. I guess the money kicks in like after the new year 26. So you have that money coming in that helps these teams. In Andrew's case, and down in Atlanta, you also have a mixed use project going on with Centennial Yards. Andrew, what does that do to help maybe offset some of the revenue lost from the rights fees that you've lost, local rights fees?
I don't know that we look at it like one offsets another. I mean, we have a business to run. We all encounter great opportunities and challenges along the way. And this isn't hey, this isn't where we need to be so we can make it up here. We're just not wired that way. We're focused on moving forward, doing the best we can with the circumstances that present themselves, trying to think 4 or 5 steps ahead. Where are we going to be in the next few years? What I can tell you is it's no surprise that sports and entertainment venues have become the new anchor tenants to the malls of the future. And we bring in a lot of traffic, and you look at the opportunity here in downtown Atlanta. But listen, what the Braves have done up at the Battery, what the Patriots have done at Patriot Place and Ballpark Village in St. Louis, and certainly something that is somewhat analogous to what's being built here by the folks at CIM with Centennial Yards, is really LA Live meets Hudson Yards, built over railroad tracks and at the doorsteps of an arena. And so we're really, really excited. We think this is going to change the landscape of the city for generations. This is a 50-acre hole in the ground that was generating zero revenue for the city and is really serving as a catalyst for a revitalization of downtown Atlanta. We've talked about, prior to the call, some of the exciting mega sports events that are coming to the city. We have the College Football National Championship this year here. We're doing a concert series leading up to that. We have 8 World Cup games in 26, in 28. You guys have reported, as you know, and got confirmation. The Super Bowl will be here in 28. 31 is men's Final Four, not to mention SEC championship games and all the other things happening. So everything is coming to downtown, and for so many years, we were point-to-point destination. You came and you left. And if my friend Dwayne was in town for a Blazers game and we said, hey, we want to go have dinner and then walk to the game, we'd probably come to the Arena, which is really the best restaurant at this point in downtown Atlanta. We wouldn't have the options that you do in so many great cities. So what Centennial Yards, and I applaud, Richard Ressler, Tony Ressler, and the CIM folks are doing to build this mixed-use space is really remarkable. And again, it's going to reshape downtown for many years to come. And a couple of years when Dwayne's here for a game, we will be able to go have a great meal in Centennial Yards and just saunter across the street to State Farm Arena to watch some Hawks basketball.
Dwayne, tell me about around your arena. What's in the work? What are you guys doing there? I know there's some renovations going to be going on, and tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, our big event that we're hosting is the Women's Final Four in 2030. So, all eyes are sort of on getting ready for that event and making sure that's hopefully the biggest event in Portland, and then also paves the way for us to have bigger events in the future. Portland has not usually been seen as a market for these kinds of events, so would love for us to make sure that happens. And what we've done is partnered with a group called Almina Vision Trust, who's working on revitalizing this neighborhood. These used to be a very prominent Black neighborhood that was sort of raised by urban renewal back in the 1950s, as the interstate came through and other things were done. And so we're working with them on making sure that the revitalization is done the right way. As Andrew said, there's not a lot of great places around the arena right now to eat here in Portland. But in a couple of years, as we work with AVT on that process and start building out what this arena district and this broader neighborhood can look like, I think it can be really exciting. So yeah, that's the big work that we're doing around the arena right now.
I want to get all three of your take on the NBA and the future of the NBA from a media standpoint. I feel like this is an exciting time for this league. I think Adam Silver made a really, really smart decision to go streaming with their national. I mean, we all know what's going on with streaming, and we've talked about it today where the audience is different. The audience is changing. I mean, you talk about Peacock, you're talking about Amazon. The whole NBA landscape has changed. How do you see the future, local and nationally, in this league going forward? Lee, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny from a facility standpoint. Andrew and Dwayne talk about mixed use. That's the magic term as far as expanding out your businesses in a physical way. And I think the same thing applies in terms of your media business. You need to offer up a range of content, a range of streams, a range of platforms. And by the way, the results, you were mentioning Utah, the results are not just, what are you getting in terms of rights fees? There's a whole range of revenue opportunities that are being generated now. First of all, as Dwayne noted, you're now being seen in 10 out of 10 TV homes. Your on-court signage now is seen in 10 out of 10 TV homes. Your marketing is now seen throughout your marketplace as compared to 20 or 30 or 40% of your marketplace on cable alone. You're able to gain a substantial amount of data in terms of who's watching, how they're consuming. Your streaming platform can include more than just the game itself. It includes social media. It can include, a range of e-commerce opportunities, ticket sales, merchandise, a whole range of opportunities that you previously weren't able to exploit by just watching one single screen. And you also, as we just were talking about, a range of businesses that offer year-round content, year-round events. The key going forward is to exploit all of that on a local basis, on a national basis. The NBA, quite rightly, developed additional content opportunities, additional platforms, moved into streaming, offered up international, offering up now, an increasingly robust WNBA schedule year-round. That allows you to create a truly mixed-use approach to media that exploits all the platforms, exploits all your content, and maximizes viewership, revenue, and ultimately franchise value. That's the key here. If you can't be seen by your fans, then you lose your fans. And if you can be seen by them, then ultimately the value of your franchise increases in the future. And that, from an equity standpoint, is the name of the game and how you build your business going forward.
For Dwayne and Andrew, I want you to follow up on that. Your feelings about the NBA's media, how they've expanded on this thing. And I think the one thing I've been most impressed with covering this Diamond bankruptcy case is that the NBA has kept their Diamond teams together. I mean, they've been supportive. I know they've all communicated. They've stayed together. No one's broken away. They stayed together. And MLB wasn't like that. So there is something to be said to how the NBA has handled that. I want to talk about that, though, with you two, is how you see the league going forward from a media standpoint. And it's just an interesting time.
Again, I'm happy to give you my perspective, and then Dwayne, I'm sure will be able to expand on that. I applaud the league in what they did to get the global media deal done. It's incredible. Major kudos to Adam, to Bill, to the entire Mark, to the entire team that worked so tirelessly on that. What I can tell you about the local standpoint is the content is really valuable. And I think we're all saying the same things. The content is real valuable. There will be a solution. What levels of exclusivity, what platforms, I think all those things are going to come out, in the next, 24 to 36 months, and we're going to have more clarity. But what we know is people want to watch the content. That's a given. And I think that where you get it, how you get it, multiple platforms, how you monetize it, I think, if you build it, they will come. And what we know is that they will find the content because it is the greatest reality show on television.
Dwayne, what do you think?
Yeah, agree with everyone. I think the NBA did a tremendous job on the national deal, and just being across various platforms, I think, is key. It isn't all that different for me than, it shows my age, probably the music industry, right? I remember if you wanted to listen to music, you had to go and actually get a CD, and now you are having to go where the music is. So you have to have Spotify or iTunes or whatever the platform is. So to Lee's point earlier, our content has to be in the places that people go and listen to music, or in our case, go and watch TV. And if we're trying to do something different than that, I think we're just going to create ambivalence in our fans. And so I applaud the league, I think, for finding all these different platforms. ESPN's an incredible partner, obviously, with ABC that there's tied to sports. Amazon's a really exciting partner for the league. I think that's really interesting. I think NBC's doing great things. The Olympics was a tremendous production from them. So excited to see what they bring to the NBA game. And then on top of that, it's what our teams are doing, again, with that stuff off the court. We're one of many teams, I think, that do a documentary series. We call it The Trail, and it gets you behind the scenes of the team and what's going on. And we did an incredible version of this with our draft pick, Donovan Clingan, and the process that went into choosing him. And that's just stuff that fans had never been able to see before. And that kind of thing creates fandom. I mean, it's not a secret. That's what F1, I think, did very successfully with Netflix that a lot of our teams are trying to replicate. So it's not just the games. It's really about all the content that helps create the scaffolding and platform to make and create the drama that folks see in those games, because you're not going to win all the time. And so how do you create the storylines within the game to get people excited?
So what you're all telling me is, as important as a GM and a coach is, there's also very important to have an executive producer on the TV side that can come up with all this stuff, because that's the future. That's also part of the whole team. I want us to end on this. We're wrapping it up here in a minute. I would say that the NBA gets together and shares best practices. You guys are at each other's throats when it comes to the games. Okay, we know who wants, everyone wants to kick each other's butt, but when it comes to everything away from the court, you guys are sharing best practices. It seems that way as you look at Jazz Plus, Pelicans Plus, Suns Live, Blazer Vision, Clipper Vision. It's all kind of coming together that way. You guys comment on that and how the league kind of sticks together on these things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny to be on. Go ahead, Andrew.
No. You go first, please.
Well, yeah, it's funny to be on this call with Andrew, because the amount of times that I've called Andrew about things, and he's been so incredibly helpful, whether it's been sponsorship or other things. So, I mean, that's a perfect example of how well I think we get along as teams. I mean, we're all at the end of the day trying to create more revenue for the league, which is going to help everyone's bottom line. So even though they're fiercely competitive on the court, off the court, friends and colleagues, and trying to learn from each other all the time. So the league does a really great job with, obviously, their Teambo group, but I even think the camaraderie within the teams and the friendships that I've made in 11 years in this league have been tremendously helpful in creating that atmosphere.
It is really, really unique. Coming from, a career in the media business over here for the last 10 years, what those relations are. I've heard a number of owners say, when they acquire the team, they're trying to figure out if they bought 100% of their team or 1/30th of the NBA. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. And the power of the collective. Look at how the NBA handled the Diamond teams and bringing this group together and leading the charge. We compete on the court, but I've never been when I got in the league, and I would call people like Dwayne and others, and I'd ask them a question. Hey, how much did you get in this sponsorship? How you doing? And the forthcoming with information. Hey, let me send you that deck. Do you want to see this? Come out and visit. I'll take you through. It is really incredible. It's made the league so much stronger, and I think it's rare. I think other leagues are getting better, but I have a lot of friends at other teams in various executive positions, and they all envy the relationships that the league has with the other teams up and down. This isn't just presidents talking to presidents or CROs it's really vertical and horizontal relationships, and it's pretty unique. And I think we're all fortunate, and it makes us all better.
I would just want to, Tom. Leave the last question for you, Lee, and you can follow up on that, Lee. Sum it up. Where does the NBA stand in the media landscape? How would you put it?
It has moved itself remarkably over a very tumultuous time over the last several years. Just as everyone was saying, and Dwayne and Andrew and the way they interact, the league has held together and has grown over the course of one of the most difficult media marketplaces ever, both locally and nationally. And that's reflected in the national and international deals that have been done. That's reflected in the cooperation that's taken place, the experimentation that's taking place market by market. What the league is looking at potentially becoming, and in the process of becoming, a truly international, global presence on a year-round basis, with soccer perhaps being outside the U.S. the only competitor that matches up to the reach that the NBA has, and a lot of that's driven by its media, and the approaches that have been forged through a very challenging time are going to be very, very valuable for all concerned, teams and league, in the years to come as all this plays out.
Yeah, I just want to be able to be the person to kind of come up with these names. I mean, I like The Rock. I like Peach, Rip City. I mean, everybody needs to come up with theirs. Everybody's going to have their own little logo. It's going to be exciting to watch here. Taylor, take it from here.
I love that. We'll get some good branding minds in there, Tom, and finish that up. But Lee, Andrew, Dwayne, this was a really great conversation to listen to. Really appreciate the three of you taking the time and coordinating. Thank you. We put a lot of effort into these SBJ Live episodes. Our audience loves them because they get to tune in from all over and hear from experts like yourselves. So for anyone that really enjoyed this conversation, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our Media Innovators in Sports conference in New York next month. It's November 20th. So definitely check that out if you're in the area or you're a short flight away. Well worth it. This will be a major topic of conversation a month from now and years into the future. So thank you, everyone. If you attended this or didn't, either way, this is recorded and on demand for anyone who registered. So that'll be available as well. But gentlemen, thank you, everyone. And Tom, thanks for leading the conversation.
Thanks,
Pleasure, guys.
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.